Well, our first order of business, I know that Kenny Smith has some prior obligations this evening and is generous to come on out and speak for a few minutes on some things that are in the hopper with City Council, or I don't know. I think you guys have been busy. So turn it over to Kenny for a couple minutes.
We originally had RSVP to come mainly just because I wanted to support Matthew and Pat. I think they do a great job for the county. They have their hands full. We all have our hands full in elected office. But they do an outstanding job for the county. I wanted to come out and show my support for them. I live in Matthew's district, so it's fun having a friend of yours as your representative. And I've gotten to know Pat over the past 2 years or so since my campaign started, and wanted to show support for them. In between RSVPing and telling Matthew I was coming to Town Hall, we had a pretty big event on Monday night down at the City Council chamber. And Pat, when you were talking about watching on TV, I wish I could have watched Monday night home on TV. But that has dominated most of the news on the city front for the past 2 weeks or so. And if Ed, chime in if you have anything to say.
We fact checking back here.
Okay. we received anywhere, I've heard estimates of 8,000 emails. I don't know what the total count was, but we received a lot of emails. Had 120 speakers come down and speak, and I will try to condense 4.5 hours of speaking into a couple minutes. But it was we had an ordinance put forth. A couple members of council were working with a couple lobbying groups to get this on the agenda. But the ordinance, it was billed as the anti-discrimination ordinance, and it affected, it wanted to add protected classes of familial status, marital status, sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression to our anti-discrimination policy and cover a handful of areas: commercial contracts, the PVH, which passenger vehicle for hire, and then accommodations. The biggest uproar was over the bathrooms, and that, debatable, but from where I sat, it would create what in essence could become a unisex bathroom. 95% of our respondents that sent emails into us had that somewhere in their tagline. We got about 7-to-1 opposing the ordinance, but again, much of it was on the bathroom portion. It was very convoluted vote. It was we were really in the weeds, so we had to vote to add language to pull the bathrooms out. Hard to follow, but the way the bill was written, the ordinance is written, we had to add the bathrooms, add language carving bathrooms out. That passed 9-2. Ed and I both supported that. I did not quite know where the votes stood on the overall ordinance. There's unquestionable, the constituents of Charlotte spoke and said they don't want the bathrooms in there, could not risk that the ordinance would pass without that language in there. So Ed and I both supported that. Ed and I were working extremely hard, right up to the meeting, making sure that the language for this was going to be in a manner that was acceptable to us and what we felt the line showed citizens. Ed actually did some good fact checking and found the way it was originally stated, it would have been a single amendment, one vote, which if you supported the bathroom portion, you would then subsequently have supported the entire ordinance. Ed caught that. We worked hard to get that removed at the dais to force it to be a two vote. So then, after the bathrooms were included, you were then voting on the ordinance that included that language. So it's an amended ordinance. And I did not support that. Ed did not support that. Michael Barnes did not support that. Greg Phipps did not support it. John Autry and Lawana Mayfield did not support it. So there was bipartisan support in getting the bathroom language added, and there was bipartisan support in voting against the ordinance. For me, and we didn't come here for me to talk all about this, but for me it boiled down to no data, have not seen anything to suggest that we have widespread discrimination, to have government alter or come in with the solution to the problem I'm not sure exists. This does not mean that there is no discrimination. This does not mean that people may not on an individual basis from time to time be discriminated against. I don't think there was enough to warrant changing the ordinance, and that's why I voted against it. I'm very comfortable with that vote. I'm sure it will come back before us. If 2 votes switch, it can get back on the agenda. If 6 people are willing to put it on the agenda, you can get it back on the agenda. I suspect there will be support to do that. But that has been much of what we've done for the last 2 weeks.
It might be interesting to comment on the dynamics of that final vote, the surprise of the 6-5 defeat of the modified amendment.
It was, it caught us a little off guard. I was reasonably certain. I knew Ed and I were going to vote against because we'd spoken. I didn't know who else was voting where. As we sat at the dais, you started to figure out that I think John and Luana weren't going to support it. I'd been talking with Phipps for most of the night. He kept saying, "Phipps, we can vote against it. We might just stop it." And Greg joined us, and Michael Barnes, I think, was probably the last vote to come on board. Ed and I were kind of laughing. We knew that it was, we weren't laughing, but we had always thought the vote would be 6-5. We just weren't quite sure what the 6th vote would be. And it ended up that the 6th vote came, and it kind of came at the last second. I mean, as you're watching hands go up, and it didn't go up quite as fast as the rest of us. But it was
But the main thing, Kenny, was that the 2 people among the 6 voted against it because they wanted the whole thing.
Yeah.
They were basically supporters. They weren't willing to accept it. And to me, one of the great difficulties in the whole thing was the uncompromising approach of the proponents of this. There was no scope to discuss in any detail the ramifications of the public accommodation portion of it, how it affected certain businesses. It was like, take this, well, you
100%.
bigot.
You're 100%
You're ignorant bigot if you don't take this whole thing. And I didn't like being leaned on by that, especially given what we all knew about the preponderance of public opinion that was pushing the other way.
Ed, you'll be happy to know you've been called a bigot more than me on Twitter this week. So. but he is, he's right. And this was an issue that we spoke out pretty strongly against. We had various reasons for it. If John and Luana reverse course, it gets back on the agenda, and ultimately I think would have 6 votes to pass. I hope the city does not have to go through this again. And I'll say in closing, this is more than an update. Now we're sort of getting personal, but one of the arguments that Charlotte will not be able to attract business. We have successfully recruited MetLife, Sealed Air. We have brought Electrolux to NASCAR Hall of Fame. All the while, we haven't had this ordinance to add the protected classes. And again, I don't think it's needed. But that's sort of my opinion part. I was here more for an update, and also here to support those 2 and for the good work they do at the county. We appreciate your service.
Thank you, sir.